Hi, you're watching Ready, Budget, Go. My name is Drew, and a warm welcome or welcome back to you. Today's video is part of the My Money Relaunch series, where I'm using this book of paint by sticker pages to help me save toward my big goals. I'm saving $2 per sticker, and while I'm putting them down, I'll tell you a little more about the strategies I used and still use to gain control over my money once I got out of debt. Ready? Let's go! Okay, I'm going to get started with placing some stickers here. I'm saving I'm saving exactly $2 per sticker, and I'm going to put down about 50 stickers. I know that this poster has 153 total stickers on it, so by the time that this image is complete, I will have saved $306. You'll also notice that there's quite a few gaps here. There's some white showing where there shouldn't be. And that is because I've either put a sticker down crooked or I didn't quite align it properly or whatever the case may be. And I've come to accept these imperfections, and they've become kind of an allegory for managing my money, because there is no such thing as a perfect budget or a perfect financial plan. And things change over time, and there are tiny cracks. Now, you address them as best you can, but every once in a while, things just aren't going to come out the way that you intended or the way that you think they should. And that has to be okay. So I'm going to talk about saving and spending this week, but before I get into it, I just want to recap quickly the last couple of weeks. So a couple of weeks ago, I introduced the Strive method, which is kind of the output of all of my financial experience and education and how I decided I was going to manage my money once I was out of debt. But realistically, this applies to people who are in debt as well. Just because debt is your number one priority, or should be, or often is when you owe money, doesn't mean that you can abdicate your responsibilities for the other areas of financial planning. The Strive method, again, Strive is an acronym standing for saving and spending, taxes, retirement, insurance, investments, and estate planning. The V stands for investments because we already had the I for insurance. And five of those, the last five, are things that you learn about when you take personal financial planning courses toward getting a CFP certification. And just to restate, I'm not a certified financial planner. I'm not any kind of financial advisor. These are just my own opinions, observations, and what I've learned through the course of my life. So when I finished the program, and I didn't complete every single course, full disclosure, I only did, I did 80%. I think there was a couple that I didn't take. I felt I had enough to kind of go out on my own. And I also knew by that point that I didn't want to go into financial services. So there wasn't really any point in completing the program. I would rather have put that money toward other goals, which I felt the money for tuition rather toward other goals than to complete the program just for the certificate. So I added in the S for saving and spending because I thought, well, this is important too, and this is the thing that trips up a lot of people, especially once you're out of debt. It's like, okay, you spent all this time and energy getting out of debt. You definitely don't want to go back into debt, but you still don't know how to manage your spending most of the time. Some people may have figured it out, but I was still kind of paralyzed. I didn't really know what to do. All I knew is that I didn't want to get back into debt again. And I thought, well, I better come up with a plan because otherwise I'm going to be right back where I started for a third time, realistically. I also want to touch on just quickly the conative method, and I won't go into the whole detail that's in previous episodes, but the upshot of that is to do what makes sense for you, for your life, for your financial plan, for your personality, for everything that is you. Do what resonates. Don't necessarily take what someone else says as gospel. What works for one person may not work for you. What works for one person and 1,000, a million, 10 million other people may not work for you. So if you are looking for ideas for how to manage your money and someone tells you they have all the answers, be very cautious, especially if they scream, if they put other people down, if they are just mean. think about why they have to act that way. And also be wary of what someone is trying to sell you. Understand what their motive is. And also understand that they don't have the answer. They might. They very well might. I mean, certainly the world is full of people who have followed one financial guru or another exactly and have done very well. But that isn't to say that you will have the same level of success. Your results may vary. Always do what is right for you. Be your own advocate, be your own best friend, be your own ally, and make sure that whatever you do with your money is what you want to do with your money, not what someone else tells you should do or that you should want to do. The other thing that I want to talk about is before you start with, realistically, before you start with any kind of new financial regimen, make a goal. And this doesn't have to be a huge involved process, but it should be something that you spend a little bit of time on at least before you embark on whatever it is you're going to do, because otherwise it's just aimless. And not only will you not have a direction, but you also won't know when you've arrived. So I like to use SMART goals, which is kind of corporate jargon. It comes from the corporate world, and SMART is another acronym standing for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And that is the parameters that you should think of when you're setting a goal. I won't go into too much detail on that. There is plenty of information out on the internet. If you'd like some examples of how that relates to things that I have done with my financial journey, then let me know in the comments and I will perhaps do that in another video. But suffice it to say, make a plan or make at least a goal so that when you're making your plan, you know where you're headed. The next thing that I want to talk about is in the saving and spending category specifically. So I would recommend, in absence of any other information about somebody, to do a spending analysis first. And that may not resonate with you. You may think, well, I've got another priority. Okay, fair. Do that. Do whatever makes sense for you. The conative approach, always. But if you don't know where to begin, or if you're overwhelmed, or if you just want a good launch pad, then doing a spending analysis will do you many favors. Doing a spending analysis is not easy. I will tell you, I think most people avoid it because either they think it sounds like drudgery and unfun grunt work, and it absolutely is, or they're terrified of what they're going to find, whether they admit that to themselves or not. But people can rationalize anything. We have beautiful brains that are capable of talking ourselves out of anything, talking ourselves into anything realistically, and rationalizing almost any decision that we make. So you can say, I don't want to do a spending analysis because of X, Y, or Z. You may also think that you already know where all of your money goes. Maybe you do, but chances are you don't. I know when I did my spending analysis, I was shocked at the outcome, and especially how much cash that I was spending. And that's one reason why I don't spend a lot of cash. Because for me, once I take it out of the bank, it just flows through my fingers and I have no idea where it goes. It's nice to imagine that we live in a world where every time we take $1 out of our wallet, we immediately write it down, or we save the receipt and then we track it later. But that's just not the reality. The wallet gets full of receipts, we don't have time, and eventually we set them down somewhere just to make our wallets thinner, and we forget about them. And then 3 months later, our checking account is overdrawn, and I say this because this happened to me, and we wonder, well, where did the money go? Now, doing a spending analysis does take courage. It absolutely takes courage. You have to be willing to face the numbers because the numbers don't lie. And it also takes patience because it's going to take a while. Now, when I was going through the Strive method for the first time, and I still do this today, I break it down month by month. So there's 6 letters in Strive, and I start with 1 letter and 1 month. So saving and spending might be month 1. Do whatever is appropriate for the season. If you are in your open enrollment period for health insurance, maybe insurance needs to be your focus. If you are in tax season, maybe taxes need to be your focus. And that isn't to say that the insurance portion is only health insurance or the taxes portion isn't only income tax. But if that is the season of life that you're in, and that is the most important thing that you're facing, then do that in that time frame and come back to saving and spending later. but I started in, I want to say like May or June. So I just started with saving and spending because it was first. So what did I do? So the spending analysis, I made worksheets for myself and I have them available. I think they're on Etsy. They might be on Ko-fi. I will try to remember to link my Ko-fi shop down below. It's new and I haven't announced it yet. So I need to make a video for that. But at any rate, um, I did the worksheets and I have them available. And you do one worksheet for each month. Now you may need multiple pages depending on how many transactions you have, but this is just a spending analysis. This isn't an income analysis necessarily. So, I mean, you can do the income part if you want, but I'm just looking at where my money is going, not where it came from, but where it's going. So I'm tracking all of my withdrawals and all of my credit card spending. You need to make sure that you use both your checking account, if you have one, and your credit cards, if you have them, and any other place where money is leaving your life. So if you have a prepaid debit card, write down all those transactions. If you have, some other kind of account where cash is stored that you are using to pay your expenses, make sure that you record all of that outflow. Also make sure that you record every single transaction. Again, our brains are great at rationalizing. That is a gift, but it also can make us tempted to be less honest with ourselves. And in order to make the spending analysis worthwhile, you have to be fearless. If you blew $500 at a casino, like I did many times, write it down. Now, for me, I was mostly writing down ATM withdrawals. Once the money leaves the bank, if it's cash, you really can't track it. If you've written down where it's gone, great, write that in. But most of the times, cash transactions or cash withdrawals, no idea where the money's gone, especially if I'm looking back 6 months. Now, I say 6 months because that's what I recommend and that's what I did. If you can do 12 months, that's even better because that carries you through every season of the year. It includes the winter holidays, it includes everybody's birthday, it includes graduations, kids' sports, vacations, all the things that you normally spend money on through the course of a year. If you have to do 3 months, do 3 months, but I really recommend at least 6. So the way that I broke it up is I would do 2 months in week 1, 2 months in week 2, 2 months in week 3, and then I would do the analysis in the 4th week. The first 3 weeks, all I'm doing is gathering documents and writing down transactions. I'm not analyzing, I'm not evaluating, I'm not judging. I'm being very gentle with myself because remember, the goal is self-improvement, not self-immolation. You need to be fearless, you need to be honest, and just write everything down without judgment. This is just strictly a pen and paper exercise, and I do recommend using a pen and paper. It will go faster. Once you've written everything down and you get to that 4th week, then you start totaling up all the totals. You go through each month and you say, okay, in January, let's just say if you're doing the first 6 months of the year, I took $3,000 out of the bank and I have no idea where that went. And I spent $1,200 on food and I went out to eat and spent $300 in that month and do that for every single month. And you're just analyzing the blocks here. And then you can use that to build your budget in the future for, okay, where do I want this to go? How much do I want to spend in each of these categories each month? And at least you know where you've been, so you know where you have to adjust your behavior to meet your plan. But if you don't know where you've been and you just pull a number out of the sky and drop it into your budget, and then you blow the budget, that results in bad feelings. So I would rather have the bad feelings up front of saying, boy, I wish I hadn't spent $300 in restaurants in January, rather than saying, oh, I'm going to spend $100 in restaurants this next January, don't change anything about my behavior, and then when I've spent $300 again, I feel like a failure. So be gentle with yourself, but be courageous. Also in this first month, for me, I did something with savings. Now, I was still doing the spending part, right, the spending analysis, but because I was freshly out of debt, I thought, okay, I need to start saving because now I have the money to do it. And if I don't if I'm not intentional with where I want that money to go, it's just going to slip through my fingers again. So I started very small. I think I started with $10 and I opened a high yield savings account at a credit union. I got a fantastic rate. My interest rate back then was 6%, but only on the first $500. And after that, it dropped to 0.10% for $500.01 onward. So this is what I mean about don't necessarily think a credit union is your friend, because the credit union is only encouraging me to save $500. After that, they're punishing me by paying me less than the rate of inflation. It's almost like if I'm putting my money in the credit union, I'm asking them to help me lose money on my money because it's eroding its purchasing power. So be mindful when you start saving of where you're putting it and how much interest you're earning and how safe it is. Don't put your money in the stock market thinking that it's safe there, even though the markets have been going up, 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 because that can always change. Keep it somewhere that's FDIC insured if you know that you're going to potentially need that money someday and need it in a hurry. If you lock it up in the stock market, in a CD, in real estate, and you need it to be liquid, then you're going to have a whole lot more of a difficult time accessing the money when you need it than you would if it were in a liquid savings account. So just be mindful of that. And that's what I did. Right. So I was doing my spending analysis, and then I also was saving a little bit of money at a time just to start with the habit. So that is the first steps that I took. I actually have a lot more to say on this subject, but I kind of whipped through getting the stickers down this week, so I don't have as much time. I will talk next week about taxes. I will start with income tax, but like I say, taxes aren't just income tax. You look at your total tax burden, and it is way higher than you think it is. It is way more than your marginal rate. So look for that coming up next week. And then the following week, we'll talk retirement and then insurance and so on and so forth. And then I will come back. And again, remember, this isn't a prescription. Do what makes sense for you. What I'm talking about this week, that may not be where you want to start for whatever reason. But these are just things that I did, and hopefully they inspire you or at least give you an idea of what you want to do with managing your money. So thank you so much for watching. As always, I appreciate all the time that you spend here. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a thumbs up, drop me a comment down below, subscribe if you're new, and until I see you in the next one, take care.